Namaste. Welcome, beautiful souls. Welcome to Wednesday deck reviews, walkthroughs. And today I have for you a very something that's been collecting dust in the cupboard. Let's say that. I was preparing for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 tarot, and I was going to use my theme as a collection of decks from 2004. However, I decided that this particular deck needs a little bit more time, and I didn't want to gloss through it in a minute and a half in another video. So that's why I am sharing this one with you here today, because I think it is so deserving of a little bit more time. When I first got this deck, I did work with it, and the reason I got it was because I had the inner child cards with the guidebook also by Isha Lerner. The artist is different. So in this particular deck, the artist is Amy Ericksen. This is an absolutely stunning, colorful deck. And so today I'm going to talk about numbers, color, different ways I might be using this deck, and just why I actually pulled it out of my tarot library. So welcome everybody. My name is Sadhana. I'm an intuitive reader and a healer, and it is my pleasure to be here sharing this kind of thing with you. And I think there's a lot that Tarot of the Four Elements has to offer, so I hope you enjoy today's discussion. The Guidebook is a book that is definitely worthy of purchase on its own. As I mentioned, this book deck was published in 2004, and it is still available, and that should be an indication of its enduring quality. I think any guidebook written by Isha Lerner is worth its weight in gold. She really does have a beautiful way of writing and an immense wealth of knowledge. So I think I'm just going to front load this and saying I highly recommend venturing into this deck. And if it's one that you have on a back shelf somewhere and have never worked with it, pull it out. You won't be disappointed. Okay? All right. So this guidebook does some very different things that others guidebooks don't do. If you have been working with Kelly Burton's Sacred Bee decks, Kelly Burton is one of the creators that uses the Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio, in her artwork to bring awareness to the balance of nature. And this is also a concept that is very important in this deck as well too. The amazing properties of spirals connect the spiritual with the scientific. And she goes on to say that this number, the Greek letter pi, also denotes a basic proportional pattern in plants, animals, and even the human being. It has to do with the relationship between the hands and the fingers and all the parts of the body. And she does mention as well the honey bee hive. So I think the many little layers that are offered here really build something kind of magical in this deck. There is a brilliant description of the colors. And let's get to the cards, and I might just read a little bit from some of the color descriptions for you, because they're very good. And I think something else that is important here, like this is not a deck you would want to trim, even though it is a large, wide, oracle size deck. This is a standard size tarot card. So it is that much wider and not quite as tall. Okay. because the energy of color is very intentional in this deck. And the use of color is meant to evoke emotion. And so as we look at the Fool, the frame as well as whatever is within the picture, allow the colors to bring something forward for you. And of course, the dots and the spirals and all of that have messages for you as well too. In some of the cards, we see other interpretations. So not straight up Golden Dawn interpretations. This is tribal folklore, earth mythology, and human magic. This is a blend of mysticism from a very earthy sort of level. Here we see, and one thing I find really interesting, because in the guidebook, let me go to the magician page. This is a large book. You know how sometimes we're disappointed because we don't have color pictures in the guidebook? Well, I think that it is almost better to have the black and white pictures in the guidebook, because in the black and white image, I see something a little bit different, and other things actually catch my eye that I don't see in the colored picture. Yeah, so let's go to the magician, and I want to share with you a few descriptions, and then I want to share with you some of the color descriptions as well too. This figure wears a true magician's cone-shaped hat pointing to higher consciousness and containing a pentagonal star symbolizing constructive freedom. The lightning bolts emanating from his hands represent the power of manifestation passing through his being as a clear channel of divine will. The magician is dazzling and alive, offering art, music, play, and freedom of expression. The magician, sitting on the face of the moon and raising his arms to greet the rainbow sun, mirrors the dynamic force of creativity and invention. So what this guidebook offers is she calls it, what does she call it? A description of a traditional image, and then she goes on to explain the imagery, the iconography in this beautiful artwork. The color purple. The color purple. It's just, the color in this deck is really powerful. And I would suggest that you use it to your advantage in working with this deck. I had it all marked. Now it's disappeared. Okay, the color violet. I won't read the whole thing because that's just one paragraph. Violet is the nearest color vibration to ultraviolet radiation and the doorways to X-rays, gamma rays, and cosmic rays. Situated at the top of the color pecking order, so to speak, violet has a strong relation to mysticism, spiritual insights, intuitive flashes, and ingenious ideas. Violet is the color of the crown chakra located at the top of the head and may help in stimulating the imagination, remembering dreams, and strengthening ESP. Violet can be used to steady the focus in meditation and to help one's higher mental concentration. There is also a sense of power, authority, and majesty associated with violet because it has the shortest wavelength and the fastest frequency. And so this deck is very intentional in its use of color, in its use of symbol, and the way that the tribal mythology from a variety of countries has been woven into this deck. And here, there's some really interesting things. The Emperor, this reminds me of some of the writings of John Matthews for the, Mark Ryan actually wrote the book, I think, for the Wildwood Tarot. the balancing energy of the Emperor and the Empress. They are equal energies. So you may be able to see reflective qualities in the artwork in these two cards. The Priest. Very welcoming card. The Lovers are wearing masks, and there are a few cards with masks in this deck, and there is quite a bit of writing about the power of mask and working with masks and what it can. This is actually a very, you know, I'm really sorry I put this deck away and didn't give it its due. I need to work with this deck. I'm going to leave it out. I am teaching a Tarot Through the Chakras course right now, and this is a course you can sign up for at any time. And I've already offered the root chakra class, but I'm going to bring this deck into that class, and that's not one of the reasons I also brought it out. And I think I will leave it out on the table because next year I will be doing a whole year in working with pip decks and Tarot de Marseille decks, and this is a pip deck. So I'm really glad I pulled this out. If you work with color, if you study color, this deck is just, I don't know, it's I think it could support some very deep work, very deep healing work. Honestly, I'm surprised that the title Justice wasn't changed. It is a that's why, of course you can mention that, Mary Beth. Welcome, by the way. I have read quite a bit in the guidebook, and I have not read anything about plant-induced inspiration. Isn't that interesting, Liz? Liz is just commenting that she picked up this deck just this year. And this deck has been around since, I'm sorry, I want to read your whole comment. I went that so quickly. It will certainly brighten up the winter months. Yeah. So what I was saying, Mary Beth commented, this looks like ayahuasca inspired art. That is something I might want to explore. I haven't read that in the guidebook, that the art is inspired in that way. Yeah. Okay, so number 12, notice the name change here. Number 12 is the shaman. And so what I'm seeing here, I haven't read this description. I see the shaman going into the underworld, or perhaps the shaman as the conduit for you, your eyes in this world. And so we do see an upper world and a lower world. This is great. Not color-wise, but I'm just trying to think. It might be too much to pair this with it would look very nice with some sort of black and white oracle deck. And I have been diving. Now, isn't that interesting that the Temperance card is so blue? I'm going to read a little bit more of the color. Blue, the color of the sky, has always been associated with mental expansion, thought power, and the search for peace, faith, and heavenly aspirations. While we do have expressions like singing the blues and feeling blue, blue should normally be an uplifting color. It may be that when we are troubled by conflicting thoughts and confusing voices of life and cannot seem to make the higher decisions that are necessary, then the shadow side of color manifests and brings about depression instead of elation, enthusiasm, and exaltation. Because clear and unpolluted seas, rivers, and oceanic currents reflect the sky like a mirror, blue has been linked to the element of water and the experience of baptism or psychic cleansing. And then she goes on to talk about it being connected to the throat chakra. The color blue, and this is also something that I want to share with you. If you have purchased chakra decks, and chakra decks are coming through different levels of experience, different schools of thought on the chakras. The chakras don't necessarily follow the color of the rainbow. Generally speaking, the lower three chakras, yes, red, orange, and yellow. The heart and the throat and the third eye and the crown chakra, the color may vary depending on the school that you are working with. And so if you are ever in a meditation or in some sort of transcendental experience where you are confused by the color that is being represented, know that there are no right or wrong colors for any of the chakras. I think it's important to allow the chakras to speak to you in a frequency of where you are at the time. I'm very curious about the blue in that temperance card, but I want to go on because I want to spend some time with the minor arcana. And some of these cards look very familiar. And so it wouldn't be a stretch to read. I've seen that star card in other places. It's beautiful. I hope it was used with permission. The moon is really interesting. And it's very pink. It's very pink. Very, very light. I'm going to have to read this description. Very different from a Waite Smith energy. Very different from a Golden Dawn energy. That's for sure. Very light. Okay. In the grasp of the night, the feminine resides. There she kneels, sacred and holy, in the grove of lunar flowers, silhouetted trees, and the winding path of a moonlit trail. The branches of the darkened trees resemble the hands of the goddess, tenderly holding the energy of the full moon in her fingertips, with grace and awe. The 8 phases of the moon support the trunk of each tree. Full moons, half moons, crescent moons, quarter moons light up the atmosphere of this card, honoring all phases of the feminine. The light green glow of nature's eve shines a healing energy through the sky and onto the earth. There is a mint green freshness emanating from the moon image that cleanses and purifies emotions and casts a holy spell on the night, the darkness, and the luminous glow of the soul. Sun. Very few name changes. Realization is one. And look at the color in the universe card. Isn't that's kind of, oh, yeah. Okay, so, hi Saulo, long time no see. In this deck, so another reason I pulled this deck out was because of my return to Pip decks and my commitment to working with them for a whole year next year. And one of the offerings in this book, so yes, this is a Pip deck, and the intention of the way the cards are organized and illustrated is to reflect the energy of number. And I want to look at that as we go through the minor arcana. Okay. So let's back out a little bit. I suppose I should put these in the order that the deck presents them, but I'm going to put them fire, water, air, and earth. And I thought what I would do is read you maybe one line for each number. I guess I'll put this one the right way up. Okay, little harder to display them all with the wide cards, but that is okay. And I also wouldn't want to trim these cards because the backs, I'll show you the backs. The backs have a representation of each of the suits in the lines on the back. Okay, so there we go. There are your aces. The spiral one has always been connected to spiritual levels, to the idea of unity and wholeness. And she refers to earlier in the book when she talked about Pythagoras and his theorem. There's also a quote from Manly P. Hall. And the idea here is that the wholeness is light, and all of the colors are contained within the light. And so there's also this idea of limited possibility. All the colors of the rainbow are available within each of the aces, each of the ones. They're not called aces, they're called ones. So as you look at these cards, look at them in terms of any other deck that is familiar, because this is not a Marseille deck. This is a energy-inspired deck that has put more focus on awareness of the numerology. So this is really interesting. The number 2 was not always looked at kindly at Pythagoras' school in Crotona, Italy. While the monad was revered and singled out as the origin of all numbers, the dyad, or the quality of 2, symbolized the first separation from supreme divinity. Thus it represented potential conflict, opposition, and division, and the profane mirror reflection of the sacred source. If the number 1 symbolizes the concept of the father, then the number 2 is firmly associated with the concept of the mother. To some extent, these ideas also reflect male domination in an ancient era.
Nevertheless, without 2 as a universal force of the mother, there is no way to create life and the universe as we know it. The discussions of the numbers are absolutely fascinating. And yes, I've always seen the number 2 as separation, duality, and therefore it is relationship. It is why we enter into relationship, so that we can see the other, see reflections of the other. Also look at these cards and how the shapes that are being built are consistent, which is really nice. The number 3 evokes the concepts of Trinity, for it connects the polarity of the number 2 with a third plane of divine energy, thus creating a triangle. The triangle has always been attributed to the goddess and the creation of life. And since the ancients considered 1 and 2 more the archetypes above and beyond number, 3, or the triad, was seen as the first odd number and the first real number. Words such as virtue, wisdom, prudence, and understanding are often associated with the number 3. Okay, so let's go back. I just want to pull the number 3 card and just see if there's a consistency here. I was just wondering if we could see the triangle in the Empress card. I suppose we can see it in her yoni. You probably can't see. This is another reason the black and white book is really good, because you can see some of the shapes more accurately in the other decks. Sorry, you can see the shapes more clearly in the black and white illustration. I was reading Liz's comment. I did not comment on Isha's other decks, other than I said that the reason I purchased this deck was because I loved the guidebook for the inner child cards, and that guidebook was also written by Isha Lerner. And you have her goddess-centric majors. So I did link, there is an Amazon link below, but there is also a link to Isha's work below, and you can look at all of her decks on that website. Thanks for that recommendation. Thank you. Okay. All right, so let's go to number 4. So number 3 is the triangle. Number 4 is the square. And if you have any tarot decks that are based on Euclidean geometry, that might also be something, well, might be something I'm going to bring into this whole presentation as well, too. The number 4 was an important and magical presence to the Pythagoreans because it brought down to earth a concrete manifestation of the potentiality offered in the first 3 numerical values. The tetrad took physical shape as a tetrahedron, a pyramid formed by all 3 sides and a base, all of which are equilateral triangles. With the number 4, we expand from the point 1, line 2, and surface 3 to the realm of volume 4. Therefore, qualities associated with this number are solidity, firmness, being fair and square, practicality, and reliability. And these are just little flavors of some of the description. So this guidebook goes way beyond other little books that have 4 or 5 lines suggesting what a number represents. And I think Isha's done some great work here. Now, this was written some time ago. I don't know if there is a newer version of the guidebook available, so that might be something that, or an edited, revised version as well too. The number 5, I have to say I love the dragonfly on the fire card. The number 5 has a special place in the sequence of numbers from 1 to 9. It's right in the middle and therefore always plays a role as a mediator between realms. It is interesting in this regard that the priest, number 5 in the major arcana, is almost universally recognized as an earthly liaison between the source of divinity and the human being struggling to perfect himself. Therefore, 5 has many religious connotations, and in the medieval tarot, the major arcana was almost always the Pope. And she goes on to talk about the energy of the pentagram. And so I never thought of the dragonfly as being connected with the number 5. That is very powerful. It looks like we have another sort of dragonfly energy here as well, too. The star, the sea star, the pentagram on the tree. It's beautiful. The number 6, I imagine, is peace and harmony. It usually is. And into a level of integration. The shape being the hexagram or the hexagon. I remember in Madurai, Madurai, I was in a, sorry, I didn't unplug the house phone. I was in a temple, and most temples are built with sacred geometry in mind, but there was something so intentional and perfect in the way that this particular temple had been constructed. It's like everywhere I sat, I could feel the lines of energy intersecting through me. It was unbelievable. So never underestimate the power of sacred geometry. The number 6 stands for balance, function, order, and structure. One of the world's greatest symbols for centuries has been known as the Star of David or the Seal of Solomon. It is composed of 2 interlaced equilateral triangles, one pointed up toward heaven and the other pointed down toward earth. This represents both the universal link between spirit and matter and the delicate marriage between the soul and the personality. The Pythagoreans call this the hexad. It is the only perfect number between 1 and 10. A number was considered perfect by the ancients if all its divisors added up to the number itself. 6 is divisible by 1, 2, and 3. And these 3 numbers all add up to 6 and so forth. So yeah, it is in every way a very magical place, the number 6. I will be spending much more time with this deck. There's a lot here. I can tell that's worthy of deeper discussion. These are the 7s. Which paragraph should I choose? Many, many examples of the 7-fold number. All right, let's go for this one. Oh, wow, there's so much here. Okay. Known as the heptad, 7 is unique within the 1 to 9 number scheme in that it is the only number that does not divide the circle of 360 degrees evenly. When you divide 7 into 360, you come up with an angle of 51.42 degrees. Because of its special role, 7 was considered the Virgin, a pure vibration, and was associated with Athena, the goddess of wisdom, mental brilliance, law, strategy, and the inventiveness. Now, isn't that interesting? Because on the Tree of Life, 7 is Venus. I had not made that connection before. So that's really interesting. Number 8. And this is a number that I have seen written of and spoken of in so many different ways. And honestly, this is one number that I've never been able to find a clear vision on. This is the octad. It's the number that combines mystery with transformative power. The Pythagoreans considered it sacred and called it evenly even because it can be successively divided evenly in halves. 8 divided by 2 equals 4, 4 divided by 2 equals 2, and finally 2 divided by 2 equals 1, thus linking 8 in unusual fashion back to the monad. This may be why some have called the 8 the little holy number. And then she goes on to talk about the infinite. So, yeah. Number 9. Looks like a stained glass window in the fire card. We have a labyrinth. Fish. 9 of air. All right, so the number 9. There is some controversy around the essence of 9, particularly when we go back to the Pythagorean idea about the power of numbers. 9 is the highest and final primary number and could, therefore, be seen as representing completion and accomplishment, but it also falls 1 digit short of 10, the number that represented perfection to the ancients. If 10 signifies true perfection, fulfillment, and completion, then how can 9 be revered and honored? Manly P. Hall even suggests that this number was associated with failure and shortcoming. The 9 was looked upon as evil because it was an inverted 6. Nevertheless, the Ennead, as it was called, was considered boundless and limitless and is associated with the ocean and the horizon. Because there are no fundamental single-digit numbers beyond it, 9 can represent reaching a peak, plateau, achievement, or a level of attainment. Yes, must study this amazing deck. I love it when guidebooks have these amazing overviews to, it's like there's a framework for the whole tarot. And yes, the tarot has its own framework, but this goes beyond that, and it makes an even greater network and for a greater level of understanding with the tarot. So I think it's kind of brilliant. Part of the reason 10 was so revered is that it represents a flow back to the monad and ultimately divinity, but with a new power of the unknown and mystery of life attached to it. It can be seen to symbolize the combined power of the magician and the fool. From the major arcana of the tarot, an extraordinary potency. 10 also represents the power of the number 1 on a higher threshold, giving birth to all numbers and numerical vibrations that will follow into infinity. Okay. So I have not checked out any of the information on the court cards, but they are brilliant. So we have a very flowy energy in the pages. And so I'm always curious to see if there is a Mary Beth. Please be responsible. Shop responsibly. One of the things I'm interested in is, what was I saying? Oh, yes, the affinity of the court cards. In the Golden Dawn system, we have the pages associated with Earth and Malkut, if you're reading Tree of Life, right? The knights with air, the queens with water, and the kings with fire. Or in the Thoth system, knights with fire, queens with water, princes with air, and princesses with earth. So I'm always fascinated to see how a deck approaches that. Yeah. Okay, so then we have night. That's good. So you are discriminating. All right, it appears that the knights are each of them riding an animal, or they are upon an animal. So that looks familiar. How about if I read one, just for fun, because I haven't even looked. I was so lost in color and number, I never even thought to look to the court cards. So we are on night. Okay, so Knight of Fire. Generally speaking, pages suggest youthful beings, while knights reflect greater maturity. While most pages appear feminine in this deck, there is also an androgynous quality to the faces and bodies. Most knights take on a masculine form, but there are also feminine vibrations present in these cards. Among the court cards, the queens and kings truly hold power, whereas the pages and knights are sent on missions. In the Knight of Fire, we encounter a dynamic, fiery being holding a magic wand or staff in his left hand, while grasping a large green dragon with his right hand. Consider this to be a transfiguration from the Page of Fire. What was a message to awaken to your fiery spirit and heritage has now become a psychic adventure or visionary experience. Remember that the suit of fire does not necessarily correspond to earthly events. However, the dragon of your desires and passions has now been tamed or brought under control. Because of this, you realize the greater magic and strength you have at your command as a soul. There is an implied warning in this card because the dragon, while temporarily under control, will still surrounds this warrior figure. You are moving in the right direction, but any kind of rash action or reckless behavior can send you off course and into trouble. Sounds familiar. I don't think this deck is going to be difficult to work with. I think it's just going to be fun to read that guidebook. Yeah, this guidebook. Come on. Whoa, look at that Queen of Cups. She's wild. Now that's a psychedelic card. That's fun. Okay, and the final court card. I was staring at this King of Earth earlier, kind of getting really mesmerized here. And I am seeing all kinds of crazy things in these images. That's really something. Okay, I want to shuffle and do a quick 3 card and just ask this deck what its greatest teaching is going to be for me as I journey with it, especially through the next few months. Wow. Okay. It's not an expensive deck. It kind of begs to be edged in some bright colors, that's for sure. It's not expensive cardstock, so that's why it's not paper thin like the inner child cards. That's okay. All right, so I should probably adapt this question to be something more for the collective. I'm going to ask just what is the greatest gift of this card? What is the greatest deck? What is the greatest gift for us at this time? And I think I'm just going to cut once. And then I'm going to draw a main card and 2 more cards. So do you remember anything about what I said about the number 8? So the first card is the 8 of Earth. I'm very interested in those X's that they look like X's that are between the stars. And so this is taking the spirituality of the 7 of Pentacles to a whole other level, to a greater cosmic consciousness. Okay, let's put down the whole story. We have so we have a 4, we have an 8. This is interesting. Too bad Tammy Ann's not here. We had an interesting discussion of 4s and 8s in the previous hour. And the Page of Earth. Okay. Perhaps it provides both, well, a stability, an expanding stability, and it's like it wants to be explored. It wants to be known. That Page of Earth is really stunning, the way the petals on the flowers, it's like the chakra colors are not necessarily in order. The purple is close to the heart. If you imagine the petals going inward, it's really stunning. So in a way, if I look at this as 4 and then 8 and the page, I would say this is a message of, yes, this is going to be cosmically expanding, but have fun with that. I don't think the Page of Earth is asking us to do deep research, but to connect with this, almost I could say, I know it's not a Page of Wands, but I'm feeling like, yeah, pick up the pencil crayons, pick up a paintbrush, find different ways to connect with the energy of these colors. I think also too, with a 4 and an 8, the numbers want to be known. The numbers want to be understood. And so in this reading, we're looking at two numbers that have a correspondence. So I find that's kind of cool. Yeah. All right. Well, Liz, you have fun with your deck, and I hope that you get deep into it this winter. And Mary Beth, enjoy your unboxing. And let me know. This deck has been around for 2004, so 19 years. If you have some feedback, if you have anything that you would like to share in your experience with this deck, please leave me a comment below, and I would love to hear some of your experiences with it. Okay? Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you all very soon. Namaste.